Greetings, magical mages and spiritual sages. Welcome to the Age of the Mage podcast. And this is episode 52. We are continuing to explore the 9 magical archetypes by taking them one at a time and talking a little bit about each one. And so today we are going to talk about the Oracle archetype. And I know many of you will be familiar with this. And just as a quick review, we're exploring these archetypes and learning about them in order to kind of discover ourselves. They're a little bit like taking a personality test, reading through them and see where you fit in and where your natural abilities and your natural inclinations may lie. And this gives us better feelings about ourselves, like as we know ourselves and come to know and understand ourselves better and better, then we can become more efficient. We can understand where our strengths lie, where our weaknesses are, and what we might need to do to compensate for those weaknesses. And with the archetypes, we're kind of seeing how we function. So functions are like if you are a good typist, for example, you might function as a secretary, you might function as someone that does transcriptions. There are various ways to use our skills, and these are the functions, these are the roles that we can fill. And so these archetypes, they are combining the idea of what do we feel naturally most drawn to, where do our natural abilities lie, and then how can we make them, responsive? How do we bring them into our world? How do we utilize these skills and these talents we have? And of course, we're looking through the lenses of magic, spirit, and soul. So oftentimes when you take different kinds of tests, personality tests and quizzes, the like, you might be actually trying to get a gauge on what you would be good doing in careers or what your relationship tendencies might look like, these kinds of things. But for us, we are working through these magical types because we want to understand how we function and what our preferences are in the realms of magic, in the realms of spirit. And we can use this information, as always, for ourselves to improve, but it comes in really handy if we decide to join up with a small working group someday, because we can say, just at a glance, oh, you're a protector? Oh, great, I'm a healer. Wonderful. Now all we need is a warrior, that kind of thing. And it helps round out groups. It helps you identify what your role in any group activity might be. So let's return to the Oracle. That's for today. And I know you will be very familiar with this archetype. And we'll go over the general characteristics first. Oracles naturally connect with beings and energies in extra-dimensional realms. These are people who we often recognize as psychic, clairvoyant, or prophetic. They seem to be able to reach into other dimensions by using their innate talents of extrasensory vision and interdimensional resonance. We might find these souls using divination tools such as tarot cards, pendulums, the I Ching, runes, or astrology to access mystical clues and messages that lie just beyond the reach of our 5 senses. Some oracles are born with the gift of seeing into the future, into the past. Many are able to perceive reality as it truly is, a complex system of holistic and multidimensional forms. Throughout history, people have visited oracles to gain extra perspective on their lives. Leaders have sought them out for their foresight and their advice. While some oracles might specialize in telling the future, others are more interested in working between and within multiple realms. Many oracles are here to help us bridge our 3D world with the invisible dimensions that overlap and interact with our world. Some oracles serve as emissaries and liaisons between realms. For example, we might find an oracle who has memories of a past incarnation with a particular extraterrestrial race and has come to share information with us, the Earth humans, regarding that species. In every case, we see common characteristics appearing in this archetype. Oracles are seers and visionaries. They are very aware of how vast and complex our creative, multidimensional universe is. And they tend to access and use their magical and spiritual abilities whenever there's a summons to bridge, shield, connect, or communicate with other dimensions. So I'm sure many of you can identify this archetype by that description, that maybe you've gone to visit a psychic, maybe you have had your palm read, or observed someone looking into a crystal ball in order to scry or gaze and get extra information about the world in some way. Tarot readings are very common and so valuable, and we can all be in touch with this part of ourselves. We all have these gifts within us, but some of us find that we prefer to do certain things that are kind of housed in these archetypes over and over again. We start to recognize patterns about ourselves. Do we always find ourselves, or very often find ourselves healing? Do we often find ourselves protecting or shielding? Or do we fall into this oracle category? Do we find that we do communicate with other realms? Maybe we're a channeler, a medium, where we use our skills in ways that are multidimensional, like the oracle. So in each one of these archetypes, we're kind of subdividing them down into three categories. Of course, the way we each embody these archetypes, we very often have more than one that comes through as a very strong resonance for us. And even within them, we just fall into a very unique and individualized way that we portray these. So these three subdivisions are just to give us some ideas of general ways that the oracle can be broken down and that we can observe patterns once again inside this archetype. So let's go to the first one. I have called them the Emissary Oracles. Emissary Oracles, who serve as liaisons between dimensions, often have memories of their lives before their current incarnations. They might remember or have imaginative adventures in other types of realities. Many feel a natural attunement to various beings. Some examples might include star families, extraterrestrials, inner earth beings, angelic entities, fairy or elven connections, mythical creatures, and galactic cultures based on advanced artificial intelligence. In every case, these oracles feel strong connections to another race or species and often find themselves longing for home. As they emerge into their magical power, they will begin to share their experiences, visions, and stories with others. In essence, these perceptive souls help us, as Earth humans, realize how vast and varied our universe is. Many times, these oracles are in the position to share ideas and technologies with us that will help our own human race advance. Examples of magical icons. For this, I have chosen shadow birds, maybe different types of shadow animals, and origami paper crafts. These little icons that I suggest at the end of each section, they are kind of 3D representations of the energy. And so, of course, they would be very individual to you. But if you do create or collect an icon that represents to you what your role will be, what your function is as you go off into an etheric plane to do your astral, your etheric, your magical, spiritual work, sometimes having that anchor in the 3D world and it produces a strong image in your mind, and you can carry it with you when you do work in other realms. And it helps with manifestation, it helps with grounding, all sorts of ways. So it's fun to kind of choose some icons, some anchors that appeal to you. And I am just offering a few suggestions. So yes, so the Emissary Oracle. We meet people like this all the time, and we ourselves may feel this way. We may have some kind of memory that's just out of reach, but whenever we see a fantasy movie or something that shows elves, we just feel such a connection to them. Or we might feel a strong connection when we hear people discussing things like galactic federations, star beings. We have these memories in our souls, even if they haven't come to the surface yet. And for the Emissary Oracle, they have this task and this calling to access those memories once again, connect with their beings that they are connected to, often through lineage and soul journeys, and then bring information to us. They can become open channels of communication with those beings that they resonate to so strongly. So let's move on to the second type of oracle, and I call this the diviner. The diviner oracle can peer into parallel worlds and gaze into alternate timelines. Usually this type of oracle will have some favorite tools, such as special cards, stones, or a reference system. We tend to think of these gifted oracles as people who can help guide us when we have questions about our own lives or certain situations. When they receive information from other dimensions, they filter the messages through the magical screens of their own intelligence, and therefore they're able to decode messages that many of us would fail to understand. These oracles often access other realms through the beings and the entities that reside in those planes. They can receive and transmit messages from all kinds of sentient beings, including Earth humans who have transitioned to other dimensions. Diviners can also work with non-human species, such as plants and animals. In these cases, we might ask for their assistance as animal communicators or as telepathic links to our natural surroundings. Examples of magical icons for this might include a specific tarot card, a rune, or a crystal ball. So these are the very special oracles that we often turn to for personal advice, and they do seem to be able to see potential possibilities, and they have very often have strong telepathic and empathic abilities, and so they can get in touch with those that we ask them to reach for and communicate with. We will find this very often in mediums who are able to speak with those that have passed on. And when we are longing for one of our, to hear from a loved one again, these precious oracles very often serve in this manner to help us bridge between realms and learn and gain information through the messages they receive when they do this. So the third and final type of the oracles that I have listed, I have called the Etherics, the Etheric Oracle. Works on large-scale projects that connect our 3D world with other dimensions. These seers are drawn to assist beings from other realms with complex projects such as etheric grid systems, planetary energy lines, and portal networks. We often find these oracles working with timelines and other etheric constructs. When we consult with one of these gifted oracles, we are usually interested in the big picture. We may want to understand more about our planet's trajectory on a particular timeline, or how it can assist with a worldwide situation. These oracles can also work on individual situations if they choose to, but they will usually turn to their natural talents within the etheric realms and work on those planes rather than relying on direct contact with the person, animal, plants, or areas that they are assisting. Examples of magical icons might be something like woven fabric strands or various types of maps. They might even create their own map of systems where they go, diagrams, things like that. And these physical 3D items can really help us visualize when we move into etheric and astral planes to do our work. And they can also keep us connected to our natural gifts when we come back into our 3D bodies and we see them and we can hold them and touch them. So they are wonderful grounding anchors as well. And these etherics, so there are portals all around the earth and ley lines and patterns and large grids that are above and beneath and within the earth and other planets. And these etherics seem to have such a natural ability to find these areas and work with them work with natural vortices that are around the world, different kinds of energy vortex that might be, in certain magical places, sacred spots around the world. And they will often be drawn to these areas if they are going to be the kind of oracle that will work with a specific geographical area. Other times they're drawn to issues and they work in etheric planes, maybe on large scales of energy patterns and grid systems that will trickle down into our 3D world. And so that is kind of an overview of the different types of oracles. And these are just those people who exhibit these marvelous characteristics that we've come to identify and know. We know when we're in the presence of one of these people. We cherish the gifts that the oracles bring us, and we're so grateful they're here because the people who can access information and receive messages from all these multiple dimensions really bring us so many gifts. So many. They help the Earth humans truly realize how expansive our existence is, and that it is multidimensional, and that we are deeply connected to other types of beings from all sorts of dimensions and realms. So this is what we will close today, and we will be back soon with the next magical archetype. I thank you for listening and wish you all the very best. And I will say goodbye for now.